Then, madam, we're going to start by playing a little game that I haven't played for a long time. It's called Agree or Disagree. I give you a statement. Some of them are designed to be a little bit provocative, but it's to challenge. And you can say whether you agree or disagree with the statement and why, okay?
Okay, I like it. Great start. This is
Let's
exactly
kick
my
off.
kind of thing.
It's Men's Mental Health Week. We will get to talking about that, but here's the first question. Agree or disagree, estate agents are better at looking after their clients than they are at looking after themselves.
Oh, that you know, on paper, I agree. So I do think that generally speaking, we care about our clients. We want to do the best for them. We believe we at times we are doing the best for them. Where I might be critical is to say we're not doing the best possible job as agents. The service standards I've experienced myself recently with looking at properties, first-hand experience. Every single agent bar one, and so let's say I probably registered with about 10, did some viewings, made some offers. I can only tell you about one positive experience. So I appreciate I wasn't a client in that respect. I was a buyer, but still, I made an offer on a property. Took me more than a week to get a response. So whether we do treat clients better than us, I'm not sure, but I do believe we think we do. I think we put them before ourselves, and actually, as an industry, I really don't think we have enough focus on well-being. I think we've completely lost sight of what that is. Maybe that's a societal thing, actually, but um, in my experience, talking to all the agents I do, I think we are we want so much to do a great job that we forget that sometimes that requires a bit of rest and a bit of healthy living and a bit of downtime, and we're not good at that. I'm certain of that.
We aren't good at switching off. So my next question then would be, agree or disagree? The industry rewards burnout, but we call it ambition and success.
Yeah, okay, I will agree with that wholeheartedly. I haven't experienced burnout, but I've experienced, I would probably say exhaustion and through maximum effort. But I wouldn't necessarily say that's the industry's fault. I might say that's me, myself, that I've decided that I want success, and in my head, success looks like working harder than everyone else to get to it. But yes, a lot of success, and I've been one of these people that have said it in the past. The harder you work, the more success you get, and so that encourages naturally more and more hamster wheel doing it, doing it, doing it. So yes, I would agree.
Okay, this is now going to be an even more difficult one because we're going to go down an emotional route now. But most men, agree or disagree, most men would rather be respected than loved.
Yes, I think I agree. This is a challenging one. Um, yeah, I think. Oh, this is interesting. Yeah, I'm picking apart everything that's going through my mind at 100 miles an hour here, and thinking, and I'm got internal bias, and I'm thinking about what you see on social media, and when you see businesses that advise how to sell to people, sell a product to a man, the way you want to sell to him is that you are going to give him. He's going to gain respect from it. He's going to gain influence from it. So yeah,
Kudos,
I
yeah.
think you're absolutely right. The most important thing to a man is respect, which, God, saying that out loud sounds absolutely ridiculous, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? It does. And if I said to you, would you rather your daughters love you or respect you? I think I know which one you'd choose, right?
But that's so you've extracted exactly what I was thinking as I said that. That's why I said it sounds ridiculous to say out loud. Because imagine I call my mum, for a fortnightly catch up, how things. She says,
Yeah.
"How are the girls?" And I say, "Mum, the girls are great. You will not believe how much they respect me." Well, ridiculous, just insane.
It's an interesting one. I don't think we think about these things enough, which is why I like these games. So my next question, I think you've already touched on this. Agree or disagree? Social media has made men's mental health significantly worse.
Oh, that is an interesting one. Um,
And it's a challenging one for you because I think without giving you the answer to the own question, I think there's aspects of social media that's enabling you to reach certain men to talk about mental health.
yeah, and that's what I was going to say. So I think you've got that really strange sort of conflicting view that we are the most connected and the most disconnected we've ever been as a society. So it's, I think back to COVID times where I seemed to increase my network or friendships exponentially because I was on social media so much more and there was so much engagement and we were all going through this thing together where as an industry, we were working it out. And so I ended up making a load of mates from social media, genuine friends, that people that now, 5, 6 years later, I would happily go for a beer with. But at the same time, social media, it can be poison. And there's so much horrendous content on there. And when I say horrendous content, that word horrendous, maybe it makes you think of people doing awful things. Actually, I think the horrendous content is the fake stuff that it leads you to believe what you're doing is not enough and what you're doing is not good. There's so much. I'm leading my best life, and you're only seeing this beautifully put
Yeah,
together
curated.
story.
Yeah.
Yes, and so a massive thing. So we're striking on something that I'm really passionate about here is the best story you can tell is your story, an authentic. If it's vulnerable. It doesn't have to be vulnerable, but honestly tell your story because sorry, I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit here.
So,
I've got a position on work from home, and my work from home position is that I don't think it's healthy for people, and I think maybe there's a blended approach, but I do think the office is a really important place to be. And the I think I remember saying to my team when we brought everybody back is that the issue I have with work from home post COVID was in the future, if you're working from home, then you aren't able to fulfill your responsibilities. And my team, well, what do you mean? Well, you're responsible for training the next wave of team members that come in. And all that wonderful experience you had when you joined over the last 2 years, that
yeah.
was because of the cohort that were here before you. And we have a responsibility to help the next cohort. And I think social media is a perfect example that I think we have a responsibility to demonstrate everything that's going on. If you want to be present on social media, that's fine, but you must do it in an authentic way because you are responsible for what other people are seeing. And I think we have to take that responsibility seriously. And I'm not saying it has to be, you don't have to demonstrate the worst things in the world. And it doesn't have to be tears and massive issues. But if all you're talking about is, estate agency example, I sold this property in 24 hours. If
Yeah.
that's all you're doing, that's not your business. Your business is not 7 posts a month about selling a property in 24 hours. That's not. Yeah, your business is dealing with an HR issue, dealing with the fall through, helping someone through a really difficult transaction, or a grieving widow who's now going to be selling a property. They are the stories that make your business real, and they're the really tough ones. So wow, that's a really long response, but yeah, social media is a really tricky one that I think requires my belief requires people to take responsibility for what they're putting out there.
And do you think it's also a form of discipline? So, for instance, I'm really bad at regulating my diet, as you can probably tell. But we don't, I think people are really bad at regulating their diet of social media. We don't realize sometimes that social media's algorithms are designed to feed us the stuff that they know is gonna turn us on, but turning you on doesn't need to be something good. It can also be, I'm going to make you outraged. I'm going to make you feel angry. I'm going to make you feel envious or sad. Very often, those negative emotions are what turn take people's attention onto the content.
Yeah, I mean, you just think back to the Sun newspaper. How did they get you to buy the newspaper with a scary headline that
Yeah.
absolutely pulled you in? And social media is it on ecstasy, I believe. So I was at lunch with an old friend today. I say an old friend. She was a client years ago at our previous company. She's 75 years old. She's the chairman of a very large business, and I see her like a little bit like an auntie. So every 6 months, I try and take her to lunch. I realised today the last time I took her to lunch was 3.5 years ago, which is awful. We talk on Facebook every now and again, and she told me a story about her niece, which I won't give you full details. I'll give you some of the detail. Her niece. Police showed up at the door. Three police cars and a van banging on the door. Um, Door was answered by mum and dad. What's wrong? Where is your child? She's upstairs. She had called into. She was demonstrating on social media the concept of self harm. In the last month, that's the third example I've heard from someone talking about a child, maybe early teens, demonstrating self harm on social media. And
Yeah,
so when we talk about the negative consequences of social media and what the algorithm can show you, it is a really extremely dangerous place because the algorithm is so powerful and it's so intelligent and it's so capable of understanding what you've shown the slightest interest in. The audience might not know this, but you don't need to like something for the algorithm to know you like it. You don't need to engage with it. Just an ever so slightly increased watch time on a piece of content. You watch a video for 7 seconds, whereas normally you watch it for five, and the algorithm thinks you're interested in that and will feed you with all sorts of stuff that's dangerous. The flip is, last week I found myself on a bit of a social media binge because it had picked up that I was interested in comedy, and I saw so much funny content that
yeah,
I don't normally binge social media, but it really got it's hooking to me, and it was a I went to bed with a smile on my face because there was so much good human stuff. So
yeah.
it's
So it's again, I think it's probably about regulating what you take in and being mindful of the fact that, you know, 'cause sometimes we don't think consciously about what it's doing, and if you switch off and you don't watch the bad stuff, then if you were to do that, then the algorithm would say, okay, Ben's not interested in that today,
hmm?
but he is interested in the happy stuff today. Um, Really fascinating. My last agree or disagree, and this takes us back to, suppose, a subject that's going to be close to your heart because I know that you've spent some time helping women in the state agency, and obviously you've gone on to be a really sort of strong advocate for um, men's networks as well. But agree or disagree, women generally have stronger support networks than men.
Yeah, I think I would agree, although I, I guess I can't speak from very specific first-hand experience. What I can speak from is the women in the state agency and being a part of that for a period of time and seeing how strong a support network that specific group is. Extraordinarily supportive. Men didn't have something similar, and we don't now, but we're working towards something. We're on a bit of a journey with Boys Club to try and create that environment where men are not, they don't just feel supported, they are supported. How I might caveat that is that it's probably not so much that women have more in the way of a network. I think it's that women are slightly more comfortable to have a conversation with people about things that traditionally men would find more difficult to talk about. And so I have an example where I spoke to someone who's a member of the boys club
Yeah,
at the weekend, and he messaged me in the week and said he wanted to have a chat. I said, yeah, cool, it's great, let's get together. And as it happens, we were in the same location on Sunday, so we had a chat. And off the back of that, I followed up. Well, we didn't. Sorry, follow up with exaggeration. We were on a call together on Monday, and I followed up via that call. Yeah, how things. And he said how thankful he was for that conversation because he's going through something right now. I've got a bit of experience with myself, and all I did in that conversation was say to him, "Yeah, mate, you're a human like the rest of us. You know what you're going through is it's okay to a bit of stress and anxiety around." What you're going through makes you normal.
yeah.
You'd be a psycho if you didn't. So he was only happy to have that conversation because we have a friendship. Whereas what I've seen from the women in the state energy group is, and I think women more generally, they're more comfortable to be open quicker with people and have that conversation. And society sees it as more widely accepted still, and that's our real issue, I think.
I think that's fair enough. Right, enough of the quick fire round. Thank you so much.
Quick
I
fire!
love.
I've been a disaster there for you. There's nothing
No,
quick
no,
fire about that.
that is exactly what this is designed to do. The reason I love agree or disagree is that you can't people can never just say, yeah, I agree without qualifying it. And it sort of forces you to try and sort of think about both sides of that argument, and you end up debating it out with yourself live on screen. So I love that. Ben Madden, thank you for joining us. We are talking specifically this week about men's mental health, and I always say two things when it comes to these weeks about mental health awareness. Number one, it doesn't just last for a week; it's there all the time. And I think it's probably worth us saying that when it comes to men, women have as many issues as we do, but I think we have just due to the way that I think maybe we've been brought up, or maybe societal pressures. We have there's different social pressures, different expectations from men and women, which we're all trying to challenge that feed into our mental health. And I think that there is this misconception out there sometimes that men don't want to talk about it. And I think what I've come to discover is it's how we talk about it. They don't wish to necessarily be pitied or to be seen as weak and so on. But I've seen it on your the group that you steward so well on online, that the boys group. I've seen discussions on there where people do open up and it always starts the same way. I don't normally talk about this, and
Hmm. Hmm.
I've rewritten this post 6 times, but then and you suddenly, they come out with it, and there's a very powerful personal struggle that's going on in the background there, and no one in the world can look at that and say, I have no empathy for you, and I have no idea what. Why don't you just pull yourself together, chap, and get on with it? And in fact, what it does is it sort of encourages people to say, actually, I've experienced a bit of that. This is similar to that. So I know you've been at the forefront of that, and I see some of the struggles that you have to get people to open up and to contribute more. It's happening slowly. Um, has it been easier than you thought it was going to be? Is it hard or harder? Because you've got a great board there,
Uh,
and they're making effort.
yeah, so I would say it's been a journey. So it's been a few years now since the first boys' club meeting, which was a Zoom meeting that was attended by 11 of us, and we heard the story of one person who'd had a really tough time, and we're in a very different place to that now. And we've transitioned over time. We've had lots of people that are part of the group tell their story, and the concept behind that is a little bit like you just said. When people post, so many people say things like I've experienced something myself. I've got this saying that I've ripped it off from someone far more intelligent than me, but I think your problems are very rarely your own. They were someone's before you, and there'll be someone's ahead of you. At some point, we all experience these things. So by sharing them, firstly, I think we all, we want to call it venting, getting something off your chest, getting it out there, just getting it out of your head and stop the rumination and allow it to be dialogue. Firstly, is cathartic and a very positive experience.
Yeah,
But what we've experienced in the group now, and actually, David, you can take some credit for this. We have got a great board. The guys are fantastic. They come on board this year and have been super supportive of driving up engagement and getting people comfortable talking to each other. But you were one of the first people in the group to help with that communication and talk through some stuff and
yeah.
present some things that have been happening. And so it takes, I think, bravery for people to step up and do that. And it takes extreme bravery for the first few to do it. So, publicly, thank you for that, genuinely. Um, but
It's interesting. I'm going to stop you there because we spoke off camera about a friend of ours that we were worried about, and you used the phrase that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to realize that something. And that day that I posted on the boys group, for me that was rock bottom. I had got to the point where I didn't know where we were going with that particular challenge and that issue. And I wanted to sort of demonstrate to the people in the group that sometimes we don't have the answers. And sometimes your head does funny things, particularly with men. I always talk about the fact that we always short circuit to, I haven't got a solution to this. And therefore, if I remove myself from the picture, that's going to be the solution to
Mm-hmm.
everyone else is going to be better off.
Mm-hmm.
And the spectre of we're going deep here, Ben. And trigger warning, everybody. I'm about to use that word, but the spectre of suicide amongst men is ever present in all discussions that we have about mental health and
Mm-hmm.
problems. It's a so to me, it was a real that day was actually quite a low point, but it being able to share it and sort of maybe help other people along the way helped me
Mm-hmm.
and the comments and the feedback that I got back afterwards made me feel that actually, I mean, that I could perhaps find a way through it all. So it's interesting because very often we only see one side of that story, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the other side of it.
Yeah, and you're right. The one side of that story is the story we're telling ourselves in our head that we can't do this, we shouldn't do this, we mustn't do that. And that's, you're absolutely right to touch on the suicide piece, which is absolutely awful and terrifying statistics. But yeah, I can't come from a medical background here, but the data and some of the things you just said just scream that our default position is success or failure.
Yeah,
And if we can't get to success, if we and in some instances it's finding a solution to a difficult problem. And so I can talk to you right now about my own life, and I don't mind sharing this on screen. I've talked about it before. Right now, I'm in that position where so many men my age are sort of middle age, and we're dealing with we've got business commitments, we've
yeah,
got children, and so in my life, I've got three daughters, three beautiful daughters. Our oldest is 10 years old, and she's going through some real issues with. She has sort of severe, what I've described as severe learning difficulties, and trying to get her EHCP and the support she needs is is nothing short of astonishing in this country that we make it so difficult for families and for parents and for children to get the
yeah,
support they need. So we're having that battle right now, and that battle is difficult on me and her mum, but that's the responsibility of the parent you have to be strong for them, you have to get through it, and you have to fight this, and you have to help. But um, more than that, it's difficult on her because at one point she was undiagnosed and she simply couldn't read, and we couldn't really work out why. And she was making herself physically sick so that she didn't have to do reading time in the class environment
yeah.
and have her friends who could read. That for a for me, that is, I don't cry. That brought me close to tears that my daughter
Heartbreaking,
was in
isn't
that
it?
position. Yeah, and then at the same time, we're looking after our parents, and my dad's dementia is coming in real fast, really, really, and I know so many people dealing with it. And it's really awful, and it's a difficult thing to deal with. And so this is not I'm dealing with difficult stuff, Phil. For me, I'm dealing with what so many others are dealing with, and we find ourselves in this position that I don't have a solution for my daughter. I'm fighting to find one. I really don't have a solution for my dad, and I actually can't find one. And because of the way our brain works, if we don't find a solution, then quite often we're a failure, aren't we? And so
Yeah,
if we're a failure, as you just said, maybe the world is better without this failure taking up space. And so it's society puts you under pressure. You put yourself under pressure. I don't believe there's any quick fix, but as you demonstrated with posting in the group, I hope that is a fantastic example to others watching this that they can do the same and they will experience the sort of support that you did. And I know that as soon as you posted that, we were on WhatsApp and just checking and see how you were, um and then because I now have and everyone has a bit more context around what you're going through, then we're able to have more of an interest. And we've spoken several times about what you were going through. Although actually today leads me to we haven't spoken about it in months. I haven't
no.
checked in on you, and that makes
So,
me feel
so,
bad.
so update. I'll tell you for everybody in the men's group that may be watching. The issue that I was having at the time was related to also my daughter's mental health and her health in general, and it was a dark period of time, but thing is with mental health, and I think this is for everybody, it's one of those things that you can make progress and you can have 2 or 3 wonderful days where actually you could be forgiven for forgetting the fact that the dark days even happen, and you think, "Whoa, we're out of this." But mental health can unravel so quickly back the other way.
Hmm.
When it does, that's so devastating because you think,
Hmm.
oh, all that progress we made, I thought we were out of the woods. So it's a yo-yo really sometimes, or that pendulum swinging between, mental health as we want it to be, and then accepting as well there's a certain fragility of that human experience that actually
Hmm.
we probably we remember the bad days more than we do the good
Hmm.
days. We're just programmed that way.
Hmm.
And so yeah, we're making progress with that. And so
Good.
on our good days, it's amazing. And I'm very grateful and I count my blessings. On the bad days, if you would have spoken to me 2 days ago, I would have had a different perspective on it because that kind
Yeah.
of cloud descends
Hmm.
again, and it affects everybody. And I think when you mentioned your supporting your dad and your daughter with two very different ends of the life spectrum, if you like, and two very different challenges. You it has an effect on the people around them as well. Not their fault, but
Hmm.
it affects you as the caregiver, and it affects the family in a way, and it affects the family dynamic. So the thing is about mental health, it's not like I want to say something that I think will be taken out of context would sound outrageous, but it's not like other illnesses, physical illnesses. But if, somebody has a physical illness, there's a certain beginning and an end to it. We kind of know where it's going. And the doctors will be able to say, don't worry, if we do this, we've got a 50-50 chance of getting out of it. Or, sorry, there's no chance, but this is the time you've got. And our heads as humans are able to get around it. With mental health stuff, I think it's a constant battle and it's never uniform, and nobody can turn around to you and say, it's going to be okay tomorrow. Don't worry about it, pal. And so I think that has its own toll on caregivers. So one of the
Hmm.
things we might talk about with men is the fact that very often they are perceived as being that rock or that support to the
Hmm.
family. And in your case, you've kind of lived that experience. It's a hell of a pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's. I think so. I was just as you said, I was thinking that it is. I see it as my responsibility. I'm the eldest son of my parents. I mean, the only son, but I'm the oldest child, is what I should have said there. Actually, I've got a sister who's younger than me, but I see them and looking after them as my responsibility, which is unfair because my sister is responsible for them as well, and not to take anything away from her. And of course, our three daughters, I'm married and have a wife, so there's two of us looking after the children. And
Yeah,
actually, the way we sort of distribute work and family is that I've got a full-time job, and in essence, my part-time job is being in the family because of the time with the girls. I mean, and then my wife works more on a part-time basis, but is full-time with the girls. So the distribution sort of works, and we have our expectations. But it the traditional societal sort of makeup of a household. I think you and I are the generation that are experiencing the transition
yeah,
that our parents were very it was traditional in a husband and wife relationship. Very often you had a breadwinner, and most of the time that was the man.
yeah,
And my daughters will grow up in a very different environment where I think actually because of the way we structured society and the mistakes we've made, everybody needs to work very full time and have a side hustle, and everything costs so much money and it's so much more difficult to get on the housing ladder. And there's lots of data that says it isn't, but I disagree with that completely. There are so many things people have to pay for now that didn't exist 30 years ago.
sure.
And so um, I think we are the generation that are, and I don't want to use the word confusing because that sounds a bit silly, but we're in this transition where we're trying to learn what's right, what's appropriate, what's the right fit. How do we how do we prepare our children for their adult life? Because don't look at nan and granddad because what they did is got no relevance to you actually
Yeah.
because the world is such a different place. So there are pressures, but I do think that's something that's starting to change. Women um, are not what they were a generation ago. They're equals in the workplace, and actually, a lot of mums that I have this sort of conversation with, they feel the pressure even more than we do because I think parent guilt is a real thing, but actually, mum guilt at having to go work full time, based on the fact that since the dawn of time, mum has looked after the children. That's a really difficult piece
Well,
as
we're
as
gonna have
society
to delete
changes.
this recording now. You've used the word mum guilt, and it makes me cringe. Chris, I love you, man, but we need to stop talking about mum guilt. I do, but I do acknowledge what you're saying. I think that because what you're saying is that actually, yes, whereas there is that societal construct that men seemingly carry a burden for the family, actually, in real life it's far more evenly distributed than
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
Women have their own load, and they talk very often in general about mental load. So
Hmm.
things that they worry about on behalf of their family members that our brains just sometimes don't wake up to.
Hmm.
And I think with men and women, if you sit down and empty everything out onto the table, you'll find two halves of that jigsaw puzzle where I'm worrying about this, you're worrying about that, and we're actually coming at it from maybe two different places. But and it's interesting, I think that the fact that modern life has moved that conversation on so much in terms of what the societal expectations are. But I think the one thing that hasn't shifted as much and it's starting to is that for some reason, men are expected to be strong in certain circumstances, and the era of sort of machoism maybe over, but it's still very difficult to get men to properly kind of open up about things because how are things, mate? Oh yeah, 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 things are great. Things are great. They're not great. How are things actually, and how can we get that story out of you? You're somebody now that spends his professional life getting people to tell their stories. What have you learned from that that we can import into our mental health discussion?
So you're absolutely right that specifically getting men to be vulnerable is extraordinarily difficult. Um, Whereas actually, some of our female clients create the most amazing content because they're willing to be vulnerable and they're willing to be really raw and honest.
Yeah,
And and not only is it a great piece of content, but this sounds like I'm talking about how to perform well on social media. I don't mean it to come across like that, but it performs well on social media, not anything to do with social media, but because people resonate with it so much that people say that I didn't know this about you, and I feel like I know you so much better, or I've had something myself, or I've experienced in that sort of general area. And so there's a real interest, and bringing men on that journey. I actually don't think we're quite there yet, in truth, and I think it's going to potentially it's a generational thing. And actually, when I think about how I was raised, boys don't cry, dust yourself off.
yeah.
The sort of my dad was a very stereotypical man. He was a scaffolder,
Man up.
raised on yeah, pretty much raised on a
Yeah,
council estate in West London by an alcoholic bricklayer who was his dad, and his mum died when he was 11 years old, and so he had a very tough upbringing, which means that's his lived experience, and so that's all he knows, and so my lived experience is being raised by him. And so there are, whilst I believe in being vulnerable and I will open up more, it's taken a real effort to teach myself to do or train myself to be that person. And I think for the vast majority of people, they have to see the benefit in doing that. And I don't think at the moment there's enough conversation around why it's so helpful, why it's beneficial, why you will feel so much better if you do that. What I am excited about, though, is in 20 years, which I know sounds ridiculous and it's a long way away, but in 20 years, we'd have been talking about this for 20 years, And the next generation, I think, are being raised in a different way. There is more openness. They are more willing to talk about feelings and emotions and things they're finding
Yeah.
difficult. So I don't. To answer your question, I I would love for us to be further along than where we are now. The Boys Club exists to create a safe place where people can say it, where they don't, to some of this stuff to put out on social media, people wouldn't be confident, but in a closed environment that feels safe, that conversation is starting to happen more. And in my opinion, that for me, that's a good start.
Ben, whilst you're talking there and I'm thinking about what you're saying, do do you think, as hard as it is to have that conversation just amongst mates, if you like, within a peer group, it's hard to get people to open up and talk about their mental health? I'm therefore thinking, by extension, it must be even harder to get somebody to go and talk to a professional about it. So are we then, as all these people that are having amateur conversations about mental health and trying just to generally, because it's not going to hurt, it definitely is helping to open up that dialogue. But are we also really bad at kind of spotting the red lines where we go, listen, mate, I'll talk to you all day, but Ben, you need to go and sit down with somebody who's a professional, who can give you the help that you need. Are we even worse at that?
Yeah, I imagine we probably are. I think there's almost maybe a potentially a sense of there's some ego and some pride around not I don't need professional help. Let me give you a really good example. How many trainers are there in the world of estate agency? The reason there aren't hundreds is because estate agents don't. Well, I don't need training. Do I know what I'm doing. I've
Yeah.
been doing it for 20 years. I've been doing the same thing for 20 years. Why would I need training? So I think there's this approach that, well, we know what we're doing. The old classic, men don't ask for directions. I mean, we don't need to anymore because we've got our phones and it tells us where to go.
Yeah.
But I remember that we went on a holiday. We went to America when we were young, and we drove around lost for 4 hours because my dad wouldn't ask for directions. And that is typical of men, that we think maybe we don't need the support. I think it's also difficult for me to say to you, David, I think you need to seek professional help, because sometimes I think it could maybe sound like an attack. It's not meant to. It's
Yeah.
meant to sound like
Yeah.
help, and it's meant to sound like love. But it's hard to. I mean, I've got no experience of delivering that message, and I might make a pig's ear of it. And actually, if I'm going to offend you, I better not say it at all. Maybe I am. I've got an example of a friend sort of trying to create an intervention with someone that he thought was drinking too much, and it caused a huge rift, and it wasn't well received, and it caused real problems. And I think my friend who tried to create the intervention was absolutely right to do so, but he regrets it because of what it caused between him and his friend. So it's a very difficult area, I think.
It is, and I think it's something that, on the one hand, I wish we were braver with those conversations, because I think we could save more people. Or I don't like saying save people, but maybe help people, or get them the help that they really need. Because I think the one thing that I've realized is that we, in general, I asked you a question whether agents treat their customers better than they treat themselves. One thing I'm certain of is, as humans, we treat other people better than we treat our own ourselves. So that internal conversation that we have with our own brain, Dan Marsden wrote a great book on it, where he basically says, your brain is your worst enemy, and it's an idiot, and it's constantly telling you that you are, the worst things that you could ever say to somebody. Yet you wouldn't dream of saying that to a friend, or to a stranger, or to anybody in life. You would be absolutely appalled with yourself if you ever said some of the things that you whisper silently to yourself in your head. And I think that self-talk as well, that conversation is just it's so damaging sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it is a great point. I heard it said a different way, that only talk to yourself the way you would talk to a friend in need, which is a really nice way to say it. Might add though, much easier said than done. When you're beating yourself up, you're beating yourself up, and it's that you mentioned. You said, does it require discipline? Things like that. think it's a habit that you need to commit to over time, and a little bit like mental health, it's not the same as a physical condition. But one way I think of mental health is a little bit like your physical fitness is something that you always need to be
Need to work
working
on.
on. And otherwise, if you stop working on physical fitness, you will take strides backwards. And I think from a mental fitness perspective, you can always be working on it. And I put a post out recently, and the two areas that I focus on from a mental health perspective is one is resilience, and I genuinely believe that resilience can be taught over time. You can put yourself in difficult situations and remind yourself of what you've gotten through. I've got a list on my phone of about 14 things that have come up in my life that at the time felt like they were going to crush me, and I managed to get through them. And so sometimes I'll look back on them when things get really
Yeah.
tough. If I got through them, I can get through this. And the other thing, which feeds perfectly in, is um, uh, so I'm looking for optimism. Blimey, I lost my words there. Well, that's a sign that I'm on the same route as my dad. Um, Optimism and the basic thinking that everything's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I know it's going to be okay. It's always been okay in the past. And of course, awful things happen and horrible things happen. I'm not naive. But as long as I've got the mental fortitude and resilience to keep fighting, and I believe things will be okay, those two things are almost like my mental health workout, like I do a physical health workout. And I think people can work on it. And I think we can learn to talk to ourselves better. It just requires some commitment.
I was gonna leave the interview there, but you've raised something that just gives me one last question, and then I promise I'm gonna let you get back to your beautiful family there. Um, you mentioned something about working on physical health, and that's something that you're also part of an accountability group. Very often, the men's group would also say, Tom McGee will stick his hand up in the air and go, right, well, we're going up some godforsaken mountain in the middle of Wales. Who fancies a pint and a walk? And we go off and do those things. But there is a defined and accepted link, isn't there, between better mental health or resilience and exercise or outdoor activity.
Mm,
Um, and sometimes we forget that. And it's easy to forget that in an estate agent's office where sometimes there's just no oxygen in there
mm,
and the air's getting extremely thin and you just, and there's a tendency for us to feel physically worse, and therefore it feeds into our mental health. So,
yeah,
do you find that is really true for you in terms of how you feel?
absolutely. I've I believe the two are completely intrinsically connected. Um, this comes from a piece of data that I remember reading, or maybe it was a podcast years ago, and there's a really horrible correlation between professional footballers that get injured and professional footballers that suffer from depression.
Yeah,
And so a professional footballer will experience a long-term injury and they will stop physical fitness. They maybe won't have enough going on in their life to occupy themselves and they will slip into this depressive state. And it isn't just that they're not doing anything, it's actually that they've lost the physical fitness in its rawest format, and how important that is for the body. If you look at um, the um, the people that live the longest in this world come from Southeast Asia, and they have a real focus on natural well-being and physical fitness. And I don't mean they go for long runs and they lift heavy weights. I mean they're outdoors all the time, and they're aware of their body and they're conscious of eating the right things and
yeah.
taking in air and getting appropriate rest. I think these things are very, very important. I recently injured my arm moving a desk. Embarrassing. And it means I'm not going to be able to do any of my usual exercise for about 6 months, which is a real kick in the teeth. And for a short period of time, I don't mind admitting that it wasn't depression, nothing quite that extreme, but I was really down for a period
Yeah,
of time because
yeah.
my routines were going to be thrown off. My I work hard on my physical fitness, and I have to come to terms with the fact that in 6 months I'm going to be less fit than I was, and that's a frustration for me. And so I think it's important, and I think it's also manageable. You're right. I've been in office environments, and you do the long hours. You're maybe If you old school agency, 8 till 8, London environment, it's a fishbowl, everyone's going to the pub. But I think making time for yourself, something that gets you going. I posted recently, find your tribe. If you're a man and you want to get involved with some activities, join the Facebook group, the Boys Club. We're trying to do more and more bits and pieces. Nothing overly strenuous,
Yeah.
just something to get you out and about and get you talking to people and 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 active to an extent. By the way, we're not a fitness club. That's not what that's meant to be. We're not just active all the time.
Listen, guys, I'm part of it. It can't be a fitness club. No, but it's great. And look, on behalf of everybody, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. I think it's important that we have leadership, and sometimes leadership are just the people that say, "Yes, I'm going to help and I'm going to take it forward." You don't necessarily have a plan at that point, but you
Hmm.
find your people, you find your tribe, and you build it. And I can see that happening there with the boys' club. It's starting to grow arms and legs, and it's starting to get to where it needs to be. And it's maybe a conversation we left too late, but it's never too late to have the conversation. Ben, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.